Hello, my name is Andy, and I am the Village Idiot, and I'm armed with a car and a GoPro, and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. Welcome back to West Lindsey, and today I've got a village for you that's crossed by this railway line, and it's the same line we saw in a previous episode. That would be Snelland. We're just a little bit to the south of Snelland here. This is Stainton by Langworth. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Our journey around Stainton by Langworth will, as usual, be formed of a main walk around what is a circular village. Before we do that, however, we need to drive from Snelland, the village seen in last week's West Lindsey episode, through the hamlet of Reespie. Whilst Reespie might be small, it's of quite significant importance to the area. Keep your eyes on the right of the screen as we drive down through it, and you'll see the massive Reespie Hall. Reespie Hall is a 16th century manor house built on the site of Reespie Grange. After the dissolution of the monasteries, the land at Reespie Grange passed via Charles Brandon and his heirs to the Sanderson family, and they built a substantial residence, now called Reespie Hall. The moat-like features at the hall may be the vestiges of post-medieval formal gardens. The arms of the Sanderson family and the date 1708 can be seen over the porch. It's a two-storey building with 3 bay sides and a 16th century doorway. The farm at Reespie Hall is one of the 2 main sites of the Rainthorpe estate, the other being West Hall Farm at Welton, 5 miles away. After travelling down through Reespie, here we are in Stainton by Langworth. This is a pretty little village centred around a few farms to the east of a railway line. In fact, it's described by Stainton Manor Farm Barn, a wedding venue we'll get to on our walk around, as a beautiful village set in the Lincolnshire countryside between a medieval wood and a historical railway built in the 1840s. And it's not far wrong at all, really, that assessment. It's situated less than 1 mile northwest of the A158 road, 7 miles northeast of Lincoln and 13 miles northwest of Horncastle. Stainton by Langworth is generally referred to as just Stainton, as its full title is a little bit of a mouthful. The parish covered about 2,800 acres in 1841, which was reduced by World War I to only 1,452. The village sits astride the old road between Snelland and Langworth. Whilst Reespie still falls within Stainton by Langworth's boundaries, Newball does not. Newball is a hamlet just to the south, which these days is its own civil parish and will have its own episode soon. As the name suggests, Stainton is very close to the village of Langworth, which is situated on the A158. The Langworth rivulet is a small stream, and it runs through Stainton. Speaking of watercourses, its entire western boundary is defined by Barlings Eau, the very same stretch of water we saw back in nearby Stainfield. The place was an ancient parish of Lincolnshire and became a modern civil parish when those were established. It was in the west division of the ancient Wraggoe Wapentake. For such a small place, it does have a bit to talk about. For one, Stainton used to have a pub. In 1842, the inn was called Blackbirds. The inn is now a bed and breakfast. Stainton has the remains of a village cross. It's on private land in the front garden of a cottage, so it's not been filmed. The cottage was built on part of the former village green in the last century, and the cross stands in its original position. The settlement of Stainton by Langworth appears in Domesday, and it's thought to date from the late Saxon period. The manor historically belonged to the Earl of Scarborough, as noted in the Imperial Gazette of England and Wales in 1872. A little bit of Wales here in Lincolnshire. The house behind me is proudly flying a Welsh flag. We're also close to some oil fields here. In next week's episode, we'll get up close and personal with some nodding donkeys again in a neighbouring village. Stainton has one itself to the north of the village. Unlike the last two in this series, Stainton is big enough for its own demographic information. Here you'll find a population that's 100% white British. The population is estimated to have risen slightly within the last few years. That's according to the latest stats from 2020. It doesn't cover a massive area of land. Including Reespie, it totals 12.53 square kilometres, and that gives it a population density of 11.49. There's no accurate average house price for this one, but looking at the most recent sales, it would seem most houses are selling here for upwards of £300,000. Here's the parish church, which is dedicated to St John the Baptist. This is a Grade II listed building constructed in 1795. It's made of squared coursed limestone rubble with limestone ashlar and sandstone ashlar dressings, and it has a slate roof. The church itself is situated within a working farmyard, and it's not beyond the realms of possibility to find sheep grazing within the churchyard. An 1885 restoration incorporates earlier 14th century material, including a font. There's a war memorial in the church too. In the north wall is an alabaster memorial dating from 1619 to members of the Sanderson family of Reespie Hall, depicting 3 kneeling figures. The Bus Times website lists 3 buses associated with the village. The main one seems to be the PC Coaches Service number 23 between Market Raisin and Lincoln. So here in the bus shelter I found a little magazine, and it's called Langworth Local, and it's advertising a jumble sale at Langworth Memorial Hall. Just an example of one of the things that people get up to out here. The bus shelter acts as the village information point, and just outside it we have a standalone post box, as Stainton has no post office. The only other amenity of note here is the aforementioned Stainton Manor Farm Barn, a well-known and well-respected local wedding and party venue. The railway line here is the very same line we saw in Snelland, just a little bit further to the south, running between Lincoln and Market Raisin. I met the line twice on the walk around, firstly on a bridge carrying Scothan Lane with a steel and concrete parapet which replaced a former brick parapet that used to carry a rivet benchmark. So I have to mention this sign, which you'll find next to the bridge here in Stainton by Langworth. It says, "Warning, do not trespass on the railway, penalty £200. And interestingly, we saw one of these signs in Snelland, which is the next parish over. The difference is though, there the penalty was £1,000, and that's normally what you'd find on these signs. It normally says the penalty is £1,000. I wonder why it's a little bit more lenient here. Our second meeting with the line comes in the form of Stainton level crossing at the northern end of the village on the road to Reespie and Snelland. Now normally we don't get any chance to talk about the specifics of the railway lines we come across, but here I couldn't find a lot about this crossing. So for that reason, this line sees 41 trains per day, it has a speed limit of 75 miles an hour, and there's also a foot crossing between this level crossing and the bridge where Scothan Lane is. There you go, you see, here at the level crossing, it is £1,000. Do not trespass on the railway, penalty £1,000. So why is it a little bit more lenient at the bridge? I'll never know. Now, I considered a picture bit for Stainton by Langworth, then I changed my mind because I looked at the parish boundaries and thought it's too small really to warrant one. So there isn't one of those today, but of course there is a Strava map, and if there's anything else I haven't covered here in Stainton by Langworth, please do let me know in the comments down below, and I will touch on that when we get to the West Lindsey Roundup video. But for now, this has been the parish of Stainton by Langworth, and I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.